Welcome to the SecurityDNA podcast, powered by SecurityInfoWatch. This is your front line for bold insights and real intelligence that cuts through the noise and gets straight to what matters most. I'm Samantha Schober, assistant editor of SecurityInfoWatch and the producer of today's episode. My colleague, Steve Lasky, editorial director for the security group at Endeavor B2B and seasoned security industry veteran with over 35 years of experience, is bringing on Will Knehr, the senior manager of information assurance and data privacy at iPro Americas. So let's get started. Will oversees the security of iPro's products and networks. He has been working to secure networks since 2004, when he started his career in cryptologic warfare, conducting cyber defense missions for the NSA, CMF, DON, DoD, and DISA. He helped defend, accredit, certify, and provide digital forensics and incident response on the nation's most sensitive and secure networks. He also worked for Northrop Grumman, supporting special projects for the NSA and DISA, building virtualized environments for malware analysis, data brokering, and managing their cybersecurity programs. He holds a master's degree in cybersecurity and another master's degree in business. He has numerous industry-leading certifications, including CISSP, PNP, CEH, CNDA, CASP, and CMCRP, among others. With that, let's take it away, Steve.
All right. Well, we've got through the alphabet soup here, Will. So I want to appreciate you joining us here on SecurityDNA. So in this episode, we're going to focus on the cutting edge of modern surveillance, AI and analytics-driven video surveillance. And once this was a very passive, observation-based industry, and now with more intelligent and proactive tools, we're equipping them with AI and machine learning capabilities that detect anomalies, track behaviors, provide real-time operational insights. And they've become essential not only for security teams, but also for business leaders seeking smarter data for decision-making. And the drivers between this evolution are powerful, and the need for faster threat detection, tighter integration with access control and building management systems, and the growing demand for actionable intelligence across healthcare, critical infrastructure, retail, and other high-risk environments is led the charge for this development in technology. But this rise in sophistication also comes with significant cybersecurity and compliance challenges. As these cameras become more networked and intelligent, they also become more vulnerable to exploitation, to data breaches, and regulatory noncompliance. Ensuring these devices are secure and meet strict privacy mandates isn't just a technical concern, it's a critical operational priority. So today, Will, I want you and I to unpack both the promise and the pitfalls, and we'll explore this transformation and find out what works, where the risks lie, and what it truly takes to keep smart surveillance secure, ethical, and effective. So, I mean, let's get the elephant in the room right now. The biggest, I guess, poster child to efficacy and threats for video surveillance over the last decade or so has been hike vision, and they have had concerns because of ownership in China. They have been shut out of all government facilities here in the U.S. So Canada just ordered a major surveillance vendor shut down with them as well. In your mind, what message is this sending to integrators and end users about vetting camera suppliers that are on the market today?
Yeah, so the Canada one was interesting because the U.S. kind of reached this conclusion a few years ago. Canada security researchers looked at it and they said, "Hey, we're not comfortable with some of the calls that these cameras are making or these security systems are making, meaning like they're reaching out for updates, they're reaching out for information to Chinese IP addresses, and we're not comfortable with some of the vulnerabilities that we're finding inside of these devices." I do a lot of hacking demonstrations on security systems. My absolute favorite one is hike vision because it's usually relatively easy to get in, and you can find some older exploits inside of them. And then, so not only did they say, "Hey, cybersecurity wise, this is a risk," they also took a look at it and said, "We're not in love with the ethical practices of hike vision." The Uyghur Muslim camps that they deploy camera systems in. And then also, as you kind of mentioned, Chinese ownership of anything that they deem to be national intelligence, which means that, Hikvision could fall under that. And they certainly could be pulling data back from those camera systems. So all of this is kind of mashed into this thing where they said, look, we're just not going to do business with them. We don't trust their devices. We don't trust their practices, and we don't find them to be an ethical organization. The US, like I said, reached the same conclusion a couple of years ago. And so I think a lot of this kind of goes back to whenever we're purchasing these products, security systems that we're going to deploy into our organizations, it's on us, meaning like the end user or the integrator, to vet that manufacturer and say, hey, are you in control of your supply chain all the way through? Are you doing vulnerability analysis on your products? Are you doing third-party penetration tests on your products? Do you update your products? What's your lifecycle management piece like? Really hold those manufacturers to account and make sure that they are doing things ethically.
When you look at other cameras that are on the marketplace, um, and because of the origin of Hikvision technology, I mean, that was obviously the red flag. But are there other, and I don't want you naming any names, but are there vulnerabilities across other major IP camera manufacturers that end users and integrators need to educate themselves about and be a little more aware and be a little more strategic in their vetting?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So all you have to do is walk any show floor. ISC is typically the biggest one. Walk ISC West and look. There's I don't know, 1,000 different camera manufacturers that are out there. It's a lot. If you go up to them and you just ask them, hey, is anyone else taking a look at your code? Is anyone vetting the firmware that's on here? Is anyone vetting these AI analytics that you guys are deploying? Where are you getting your AI models from? Some of them are getting them from like Hugging Face, open source, publicly available, that anyone can go and grab them. And so, yeah, we see a ton of camera manufacturers. They sell cheap products, and they get their stuff from less secure sources, and then they don't do any vetting on those products. And now you're just introducing essentially a portal for hackers to get into your organization. And there's a lot of that out there.
Again, like you say, it's not just about what the video surveillance systems and cameras do. It's about the security built into those systems themselves. So, if I'm an end user, I'm an integrator, like you said, and I'm walking the trade show floor, and as you put it, you're popping the hood on a modern camera. I mean, what specifically are you looking for from a security and a cybersecurity standpoint from day one, when you're, number one, speccing that product and then eventually buying it?
Yeah, I like to look at it as going from the inside out. So with that product, the very first thing you want to do is you want to look at the firmware that's on that product. And if you are the first person, meaning you as the buyer are the first person is looking at the firmware on there, analyzing what that code is actually doing, that's a big problem. Hopefully the manufacturer has already done that. But I see all kinds of things in there. I see firmware with extremely old support code inside of there. I've seen old versions of Apache that are 10 plus years old. I've seen old versions of Java kits that are in there that are 10 plus years old, extremely vulnerable. And you're sitting there going, who in the world has actually been scanning these things and taking a deeper look into them? I see the same thing with the AI models that are on a lot of these products. They're pulled, like I said, from these public sources, these public repos of AI models. They're older versions of them, and they're riddled with cybersecurity issues inside of them. And then we kind of go up from there. So the code itself in the firmware, is it reaching out? Is it calling out? That's another big problem that I see a lot is, sometimes that's done in a non-nefarious way, meaning just the manufacturer wants to point these devices at their repository servers so that they reach out and they grab the latest versions of the firmware, but they're not always in control of these servers. They don't always go and do they don't tighten these servers down so that anyone can kind of go in there and drop malicious firmware into these servers where they're reaching out and calling them. They're not the best. Sometimes it's staying on top of their domains. So there's other people that are going and grabbing these domains as soon as they can and putting malicious firmware on them. Anyways, all kinds of issues. All right, now for the camera itself, for what's on there. Um, when that camera is powered on, is that camera checking the firmware to make sure that it's actually from that manufacturer. And so what a lot of your big manufacturers will do is we will actually sign the firmware. And that way it does something called a cyclical redundancy check. Long story short is it basically makes sure that firmware actually comes from the manufacturer. It's a huge attack vector for hackers to send out phishing links, for example, to folks. Right. And they'll say, oh, your iPro cameras need to have the latest and greatest firmware. Click here to download them and put them on your devices. So is that camera actually making sure that firmware actually came from us? And then kind of going up another level, the actual protocols, the way that camera communicates, are those secure? So think about the common protocols that camera will use. Real-time streaming protocol is a popular one for streaming the video that's off of them. FTP, file transfer protocol, for sending those file data off of them. HTTP, web-based access to the devices. Each one of those protocols can be secure, meaning we can put a certificate on there. We can have encryption. We can have public key infrastructure tied to those, so that if anyone was just to be able to sniff the traffic, capture the traffic, grab the traffic off of those devices, it is secure. I see that a lot in our industry where those protocols aren't secure. And then one step past that, okay, we're encrypting the data, we're securing the data, we've deployed certificates, we're using hashing, we're using encryption algorithms on these. Are they actually modern day encryption algorithms? Which is another big problem that I see. People are using old ones that anyone with a laptop and some basic skills can break. And so it's what I recommend to a lot of integrators or to a lot of end users: just have a checklist of things that you're concerned with and go through and hold that manufacturer to account with the checklist.
Dovetailing off that answer is, if I am an integrator or if I am an end user, and again, using the trade show floor tour as an example, how can you spot the fact that you've got a device that meets these specs, has hardened security, without having, because obviously you're not going to be able to have a long conversation. So basically you're looking at a 5-minute spiel with the manufacturer. How can you walk away feeling comfortable? What should you look for?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I have different answers depending on like your skill set.
Knock yourself out.
All right. So if you're an integrator or an end user and you're walking the show floor, like I said, having that checklist and asking those questions. But to me, a hard stop would be, hey, who else has looked at your firmware on your cameras? Have you had any third parties scan this stuff, look for vulnerabilities, or do any kind of penetration testing? Have you had anyone test this out? And if their answer is no, to me, it's a hard stop at that point. There's no point in kind of continuing the conversation with some of the other stuff that I mentioned before, because in my opinion, they're not taking it seriously, and you can get that stuff done relatively affordably nowadays. The other thing is, from a technical perspective, so if I was analyzing a product that we were going to deploy to our networks, I'd want to watch it. So I'm going to turn that product on in an isolated network that is not connected to my production network in any way, is not connected to anything else in any other way. And I'm going to do packet captures on there and see what it's doing, see what it's reaching out, see what it's talking to, how it's talking to those devices, and analyze it from that way. And then from there, can it be hardened? Do they have a hardening guide that talks about best practices and that kind of stuff as well? And I'm probably going to throw some other cybersecurity tools at it as well. I'll probably do some fuzzing on it, some password testing, some encryption testing, that kind of stuff as well.
Do most manufacturers have hardening protocols to meet these needs?
So here's where it gets complicated, because I wouldn't say most, because there's so many manufacturers that are out.
Right.
But I would say most of the big ones do. Most of the ones that you can kind of name off the top of your head, they typically do. And you can always ask the organization, do you have hardening guides? Some of them keep them public, where anyone and everyone can access them off their public website. Some of them you have to actually talk to the company in order to get them. But I would request them.
We're in an age here where artificial intelligence is kind of driving the boat in technologies across the board. I mean, we're looking at deep fakes. We're looking at broadened attack vectors for all sorts of devices. But when you're looking at how AI analytics is, within the last 2 or 3 years, really become an integral part of what a video surveillance camera system is all about. What is this new technology? Uh, how does it open up new attack vectors? And in that same vein, how do we mitigate that risk?
Oh man. All right. So this is another can of worms, right? So I'll try to stay focused on this one because if you talk about AI in general, I have a lot of comments, but I'll try to stick to AI within kind of our
Oh, well,
specific.
after you answer this question, we'll talk about your AI.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm interested in where your take is on this.
So I kind of look at AI is right now. It's like we're in the early 1900s and we're building cars. Like it's sort of like we have an idea as to how they work, but we're not 100% sure. We're not 100% sure as to what safety mechanisms should be built in. So there's not a lot of seat belts. There's not a lot of airbags. There's not a lot of like well-made tires. Kind of all that other stuff that we kind of take for granted nowadays for safety features. So with AI models in general, a lot of people are grabbing them and deploying them, and they have no idea what they do. They have no idea how they make their decisions, and they don't check them in the first place for vulnerabilities. So I hit on this a lot, and I've done a lot of hacking demos around this. So I mentioned this earlier, but a lot of them are being deployed with really old code inside of them.
Right.
So that introduces an attack vector that anyone with basic skills and Metasploit can take advantage of. But it's more than that. The model itself been hardened? So one thing that I'll do a lot is introduce full logic into a lot of AI models now, which is basically where you introduce a little bit of directed information into certain portions of the AI model to get it to make a decision that it shouldn't have made normally. So in our sector, that could be things like not identifying a human properly or identifying the wrong person.
Right.
And that kind of stuff is relatively easy to do. Here's the scary part to me is there's not a lot of way to look for that. And so unless you really know what you're looking for, that is crazy hard to detect. And even if you look at, it's like the best vulnerability tool that we have right now is something called IBM's ART tool. And if you scan a model, an AI model, go grab one from Hugging Face, go grab one from an open source, whatever it happens to be, IBM ART will rarely detect that there's full logic inside of it. And if it does, it doesn't tell you where it is. So unless you know what you're looking for,
Which it
you're
makes
just
it
gonna,
virtually useless.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And so there's not a lot of that. So we don't have those safety features. We have an engine, we have a body of a car, but we don't have a lot of the safety features that we need in order to properly test AI. But no one's going to slow down, and so that's a huge problem. There's so many people that are just deploying AI. They don't understand it in the first place, and they have no idea how to secure it. So one of the things that we did in order, when I say we, I mean iPro did in order to kind of like help ourselves with this is we went through ISO 42001 testing. We've had third parties come in and look at it. And that kind of, I think that helps. I think that's doing your due care and your due diligence as a manufacturer. But as a regular user, it's really hard unless you kind of know what you're doing to dive down into how secure these AI models are.
It was interesting. I was listening to reading a news story yesterday, talking about the unpredictability and just the and the potential for AI just to kind of just drive off the cliff is that you know Belarus, North Korea, Russia have pretty much eliminated all their AI or all their hacker farms with these teenage kids and gone straight to AI, bots to do this. And it's interesting they're doing it on Facebook and on X a lot, and a lot of it's this propaganda. It's very pro-Trump, and it's based on algorithms that are mimicking Trump supporters. And apparently, uh, the uh, the AI agents can't interpret the dichotomy of opinions now that are going on with the Epstein situation.
Oh yeah.
So you get, 1 minute the bot's sending out a very pro-Trump message, and then and immediately after, that same address, that same bot is sending out a message very defamatory about Trump not standing up or delivering on the Epstein promise. So again, that's just, it can't think, and it's got to be taught. But I think that shows the potential of real danger when you're dealing with uncontrolled AI.
Yeah. And what's crazy too is if you talk to a lot of AI experts, they will tell you that oftentimes they don't understand why AI came to the conclusions that it came to.
Right.
So even the folks that are developing these systems, even the folks that are experts in these systems, spend 24/7 in them, they can't tell you why they're making their decisions. I was going to say too on the point that you raised originally. Have you heard of this XBOW tool that's kind of taken over a lot of the hacker space right now?
I have not.
Okay, all right. So real quick, there is there's these sites where you can go and you can register as an ethical hacker or a cybersecurity researcher, and you get access to a client list, basically of organizations that are offering bug bounties. You know, folks that'll come in and find vulnerabilities in their code. Well, this AI tool called XBOW was just released the quarter before last, and it's taken over the leaderboards in here, and it's finding all kinds of vulnerabilities. And I think what's even crazier is that it's even developing its own exploits. And to me, it's scary territory because kind of going back to my point from earlier, is a lot of folks can't say why their AI models are making their decisions. Now, the company that makes XBOW swears they put guardrails in place. They swear that they're being safe and ethical with it, but they also tell you that they're hands off with it. So they let the model go and do its thing. It writes exploits, it finds vulnerabilities, it does all this other stuff, and it reports them. They only do a human review because the website requires them to do one. The broker requires them to do a human review, but it's not really much of one.
And we're getting into Terminator territory here.
It scares me.
It does. It is scary. The bottom line and the stark reality is that most or many users, when they buy a camera, it's going to be sitting in place for a long time. You know, most people, whether it's access control, video surveillance, nobody wants to rip and replace. So they want to get the most out of their technology. So if I'm a buyer, I'm an integrator, and I want to ensure that I've got a piece of technology that's going to last, it's going to be future proof. How do I make sure that I'm not going to be stuck with unsupported and unsustainable software and hardware?
Yeah. Oh, this is a huge problem in our industry. So you have a manufacturer makes a product. Typically, a high quality manufacturer, they're going to support that product for a long period of time. Meaning, like if someone reports vulnerabilities, they're going to patch and update the firmware, all that good stuff. Okay, so you got that portion. Then you've got the integrator. Integrator installs products, but typically, end customer has done lowest price bid. So they're not specing in hardening of the products, and they're not specing in maintenance of the products. And then on that end customer side of the house, who's responsible for updating these? Is it the IT person? Is it the physical security person? Who's responsible for doing it? And so to me, the whole thing makes a lot more sense to be on the end customer side of the house. End customers have to um, request when they're doing the bid specs, like, hey, we want you to vet the manufacturer and make sure that they have these things in place. Cybersecurity reporting, vulnerability programs, that they're, testing their code with third-party analysis, all this other stuff. And then whatever cybersecurity features you want after that. And then they have to tell the integrator that they want those devices hardened when they're deployed. We want the switches to be hardened, meaning like they have 802.1x, some type of authentication mechanism on there. We want the devices, the protocols, the encryption, all this other stuff hardened, so on and so forth. And then they have to build in a lifecycle maintenance program into this, whatever, once a quarter, twice a year, whatever it's going to be, that they're going to come in and actually update the firmware that's on these devices. And if they don't do any of that, it's probably not going to happen because someone's just going to say, what's the lowest possible bid I can go in with, win this work so I can put food on the table for my family and pay my employees and all this other stuff. And in which case, they're just going to deploy it as quickly as possible and move on to the next job. And don't even get me started on integrator default passwords.
We'll leave that for the next podcast. But in that the same discussion, compliance and regulatory requirements are becoming very much a high priority. So when you're talking about NDAA or a FIPS 140.3, requirements. How are these shaping camera purchases?
Huge. So in the European Union, we have CRA, which is the Cybersecurity Resiliency Act. Then you have NIST 2 over there. The US, you have CMMC, you have SOC requirements depending on what they are. NDAA is really more about like buying products that are kind of like on the not ban list. So there's not a ton of like cybersecurity requirements inside of there. But what these requirements kind of do, at least for me, is they give me the power to go to the manufacturer, I am the manufacturer, but go to our engineers and say, hey, we have to have this in order to be able to deploy these products. But building that cyber resiliency into the products and doing that has a cost. We have to pay engineers to be able to do it. The chipsets have to be able to support it. So you have to go with higher cost chipsets, higher quality chipsets. On the NDAA side of the house, those chipsets have to be acquired from certain sources and not from other sources in order to meet it. So all of this comes at a cost eventually. And so that might be something that the government is willing to pay for, but not necessarily something that maybe a mom and pop shop is willing to pay for. And so it does kind of create this almost like product gap where you have these certain products that have all these hardened security stuff on there, and you have these other products that don't. And it depends on which target market they're going after. But to go back to your question, the biggest way that I see it changing this stuff is that these different countries and these different laws that are coming into place require us to build a product that meets that standard. And we see that funneling down, not just from the federal government, we see that going down into state, local, and education as well. A lot of them are building that kind of stuff off there. But it does, at the end of the day, increase the cost of the product to build that in there. So that does create somewhat of an issue for certain purchasers, certain buyers. I personally am a fan of increasing the cybersecurity of these products. And so I am a fan of most of these acts and using them as a way to kind of pull the industry into the modern era of cybersecurity.
Here. Do you think then that bug bounty programs and CVE reporting, which are very common in the IT space, should be something that camera makers should be held to as a standard?
100%. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So if your camera manufacturer doesn't have a bug bounty program or doesn't have its previously found vulnerabilities publicly published that everyone knows that they need to go and make sure their firmware is up to date, that's a big problem. And like you said, that's standard practice in the IT side of the house. We've been doing that for 15, 20 years. And it is fun, like trying to pull this industry over. I still remember having those initial conversations with a lot of people in this space. And they're like, no, our stuff's proprietary. We would never do that. We would never have that kind of stuff out there. Or it makes us look weak. Or it makes us look like, no, it's like, no, it makes it look like you care. It makes it look like you are actively looking for problems and you are fixing those problems like the rest of the IT space has in place. So I'm a huge fan of them. I would say that if your manufacturer doesn't have that in place, that you should either switch manufacturers or push that manufacturer into doing.
I agree. I mean, with all the horn blowing manufacturers do and the industry does about being open architecture, at the end of the day, we're still pretty much a proprietary shop when it comes to most products and in most technology areas. So that's something that has got to change. We've got to get that IT mindset, like you said.
Yeah. Well, think about this too. It's sort of when you do those bug bounty programs, you are now inviting the best cybersecurity researchers in the world to come in and take a look at your product and tell you what's right or wrong with it. You're getting free vulnerability testing. You're getting free pen testing. You're getting these services that you would probably pay $100,000+ for free. So cybersecurity researcher can add that to their resume so they can post that on their forums so they can do whatever else it is they want to. But you are getting that ethical hacker coming in and taking a look at your product for free. I mean, I say for free, but whatever your bug bounty happens to be, your bug bounty can be super easy too. It could be a t-shirt from the organization. It could be a hat. You don't have to give away anything crazy. Most people, there are some folks that do this for a living, but a lot of people just do it because it's a part of their job, meaning like they are researchers that publish and write and do this. And then some people just do it for the fame. They want to be high on those HackerOne leaderboards, and they want to find as many vulnerabilities as possible.
I think it's a great place to leave us right here. And I tell you, it seems with all the threats, they just seem to be endless. And sometimes you wonder if we're just plugging, like the boy with his finger in the dike, if we're just plugging holes and the next one's going to come, to our right or our left. So we've got to be diligent. So talking to you about these subjects is always enlightening, and I appreciate you sharing your expertise with us today, and look forward to having you back.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It was a blast.
Very good. Sam, I'm going to toss it back to you.
Thanks, Steve, and thank you, Will, for your insights on the future of video surveillance in the security industry, especially as AI and other emerging technologies shape its future. And thank you for tuning in. This podcast is your go-to source for staying ahead in the security industry. It offers sharp insights, real-time trends, and straight talk for industry professionals. It's built to keep you informed and empowered wherever you are. Stay connected, stay sharp, and maintain security at the forefront. To access our podcast lineup, go to podbean.com and search for SecurityDNA. You can also find our podcast in our Security Frontline, Integrator Newswire, and Security Week e-newsletters. Of course, we'd love to receive feedback from you, our listeners, about topics that interest you. If you have a suggestion, you can reach us at Steve, that's STEVE, at SecurityInfoWatch.com. This episode of the SecurityDNA podcast was recorded and produced by Samantha Schober, that's me, Assistant Editor for Security InfoWatch, an Endeavor B2B brand. For Steve, Will, and everyone at Security InfoWatch, thank you for listening, and keep an ear open for our next podcast.